It was a sunny Saturday morning, but my mood was all but light. It was the day before Easter, and even though I don't really celebrate it, I was feeling down that I wasn't able to visit my family. The pandemic was keeping everybody at home. I decided to get out of bed anyway and make some breakfast. Maybe a cup of coffee and an omelette would brighten my day. I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do this day. All the possibilities I came up with didn't really motivate me, and since it was a holiday weekend, I had no obligations to do anything. I looked at the eggshells on the cutting board and asked myself, why are eggs such a big part of Easter? Maybe that's something to do with springtime and the birth of new life. But in our times, it is mainly revolving around consuming chocolate eggs. And that is when the coffee hit me. All joking aside, last year I had the idea to make mimic Easter eggs, but it was too late to also make a video on it and upload it before Easter. So this year I made 2 new ones, and here's the video to show you how I did it. Enjoy! First up, I cleaned the shells, of course. I don't want these to end up stinking up my apartment. And next I reinforced the shells with aluminum foil and super glue. I would recommend to use superglue gel instead of the liquid gel I used. Right now, while I'm doing the voiceover for this video, I still have superglue all over my fingers. I used a piece of metal wire to attach one half of the shell to the other. To make this easier, it might be useful to use superglue accelerator like I did here. To reinforce the connection between the 2 halves, I added some green stuff. The eggshells will always be fragile, but the connection between the 2 will definitely be the weakest point. After that, I used polymer clay to create the inside of the mouth. I knew I wanted to paint the inside of the mouth black, so I wasn't particularly precise. I just wanted to cover all the aluminum foil and bake it so that I could continue sculpting with epoxy clay. I made some teeth with green stuff that I left to cure, and I then attached a long piece of epoxy clay to be the gums of the mimic, and I pushed the cured teeth into it. The green stuff is extremely sticky, so the teeth will stay in place nicely. It is also a good thing that the mimic doesn't really have a well-defined shape, so it is actually a good thing all the teeth are crooked. The idea of this texture roller is something I got from Conjured Craft. I saw them make a couple and knew I wanted to make one myself. You can make them whenever you have mixed a little bit too much epoxy clay. The result is amazing. I'll put a link in the description to Conjured Craft's channel. Check them out. On the other egg mimic, I added tentacles coming out of the mouth instead of a tongue. For texture, I used a flat tool and pushed in a random pattern. The mimic I made last year and the mimic you just saw me make both had more than 2 eyes. This makes them nice and creepy, but for this one I wanted to give it just 1 eye. This meant I had to break the shell, which was kind of scary to be honest. After I cracked it, I used a plier to break off more to create a nice eye socket. I put a big piece of green stuff in the eye socket and sculpted it into a sphere as best as I could. A nice trick I always use for smoothing a sphere even further is to use isopropyl alcohol. The alcohol dissolves the top layer of the clay, which you can then spread out and smoothen to a nice surface finish. And then it was time for some paint. Last year I used a spray primer, but this meant the shell ended up black as well. I remember it was quite difficult to repaint the egg to look like a real egg, so for these mimics I chose to only paint the sculpted parts. This was a bit tedious, but in the end it really looks awesome. After the black layer, all the fleshy parts got a slightly purple red base coat and I highlighted it with some lighter red. The teeth got a bone-colored base coat and I then used a red wash on the flesh and a brown wash on the teeth. Very simple. For the eyes of these mimics, I wanted to spend a little bit more time because they are the focal points of these pieces. I put on a couple of white base coats so that I could put on a bright yellow layer. Then I started glazing in a bright green towards the edges. I think just this eye took me well over an hour of switching between yellow, green and white, but I'm happy with how it turned out. Spending so much time on the eyes makes painting the pupils a nerve-wracking experience. I find the trick is thinning your paint, dab off most of the paint from your brush, and then floating your brush over the area where you want to paint the pupil. Then slowly move your brush towards the model until it hits. By doing it like this, you limit the risk of making the pupils too large or weirdly shaped. To refine the shape even further, I hold the brush in the direction of the pupil and carefully apply the paint. I want the eye of the other mimic to be different but equally horrifying. I figured it would be quite disturbing if it would look more like a normal eye. I painted it in a slightly off-white and used a red wash towards the edges. To paint the iris, I started in the center and painted it while I kept turning the model around. By doing this, you can work towards a perfect circle step by step, and you can keep painting in the most comfortable position, limiting the risk of mistakes. I also stippled in a highlight in the iris and after that the pupil. To really finish it, I added some red veins into the white parts to really make this bulging eye pop. And this is what I ended up with. These eggs look creepy as hell because of the real eggshells, and I am stoked with how they turned out. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be amazing if you could like it or subscribe to my channel. I have also put a link in the description to my Instagram page where I post work in progress pictures of my projects. Thank you so much for watching this video and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.